welcome to the Fertility Conversations podcast. The goal of this podcast is to create more awareness about infertility and to provide support to people trying to conceive. Thank you for listening today, and we hope you will be encouraged. And now, here is your host, Ola.
Welcome to episode 38. Today I'm joined by Bianca. She's Brazilian-Canadian living in Canada with her husband. She's a former dancer and now works as a Pilates instructor trainer. Her details would also be in the show notes. So welcome, Bianca, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Ola. I am so happy that we finally got around to
finally, right?
Finally.
You're a dancer. I love that. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I'm a classical dancer. Or former classical dancer. I don't dance anymore. But yeah, growing up in Brazil, I was one of those like little ones, 3 to 4 years old. My parents put me in ballet class, and I just like took to it, and that was my life for most of my life. Up to university, I went to dance university.
Nice.
I started doing some different types of dance then, more contemporary and stuff. But yeah, that was all I wanted to do for my life. But then when we ended up moving to Canada from Brazil, excuse me, that was in 2006. I was going to be a dance teacher. That's what I was doing before we moved. And I ended up doing a Pilates course, and which is sort of a long story, but again, I fell in love with it, and then the dance started staying behind me a bit, and then I became a Pilates instructor, and then a Pilates instructor trainer, which means I teach courses for people that are training. Yeah.
So hey, you guys, if anyone wants to learn, you know who to call, right?
Absolutely.
So usually we start off with saying, tell us a little bit about yourself, which you've already done. Is there anything else you want to share about yourself before we...
No, we can go into the
fertility stuff.
Fertility stuff if you want. Yeah. And I'm sure things will come up about myself that I can, sneak in there too.
Perfect. So can you tell us a little bit about, firstly, let's ask, how did you and your husband meet? I know you both moved from Brazil.
Yes.
So how did you guys meet?
We're both from there, and my husband, although he was born in a different city, a small town, that was like a closed community and stuff, very tiny, he moved to my hometown when he was about 9, I think. So we both grew up in the same town, and funny enough, when we met at a nightclub. We were teenagers. So I was 17, he was 16. We're from the same year, but I'm just a few months older than he is. So so we were both there. In Brazil, it's a bit different than I find here in North America. We start going out like way earlier.
Oh, really?
Like I started going out to parties like that when I was like 13 to 14. So had older friends as well and stuff. So so a nightclub at that age. And then when we started exchanging, phone numbers and started talking on the phone, and then we decided to meet again, and we lived like a few blocks away from each other. It was hilarious.
Wow.
So I just literally like walked to his house, had no idea. I had like never seen him before. And our hometown is small. Not ridiculously small, but small. So when you went out, you would see like familiar faces, but for some reason we had never crossed paths, and we started dating. And then end of university, we decided that we would get married because I'm half Canadian. I always had the passport.
Right.
And I wanted to just live abroad for a bit and just experience that. My dad was always very encouraging of just like trying a different style of life, and quality of life is very different in North America than it is in Brazil. So although my dad is down there, he hates the cold, so he would never come back to Canada, but he sent me here. So we got married and then got all the paperwork for my husband, all the visa, immigration stuff. And and then we moved. And here we
Wonderful.
are, like
Yeah, right?
15, 16 years later.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. So let's go a little bit into the fertility. What's happened so far, your journey? Can you share that with us?
Yes, absolutely. It's been a long ride. So this year is 8 years since we started trying,
Wow.
and a little bit longer since we stopped birth control, which I know that for most people, it's like that's when you really decide,
You're ready.
right?
Yeah.
When you're ready. Yeah. So it's been a long time, and it's been a huge, roller coaster, right, to say the least. So lots of ups and downs. So I traveled at that time, about 8 years ago. I was traveling a lot for work.
Mm-hmm.
So I would travel mostly to Asia, a lot to South Korea to teach Pilates courses. So that was super fun. And but I was getting a bit older, in my like 30, 31. So we're like, okay, I think it's time we start trying. And then whenever I get pregnant, I'll just stop traveling. That was my thought, right?
Yeah.
So because I know we're so, I guess, naive, and we never know what's going to happen. So we planned it very well. Time wise, for mat leave and all that too, which is so ironic thinking back. But we timed it, and then we stop birth control, started trying a few months later just to give my body some rest.
Mm-hmm.
And then it wasn't happening. And I found out a while later that traveling, especially when it's so far, like so many time zones, like 12 to 13 hours difference, right? From where I live to South Korea, it really messes up your cycle.
Oh,
which
really?
I had no idea. Yeah. And I think when you're younger, it probably doesn't that much. But I started realizing, because I think I started traveling when I was, I think, 27-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And at this time I was over 30. And I started noticing like my cycles would either get really short, or really long. So like 20 something days and then 30 something days. And I'm like, okay, this is not a good thing, especially if you're trying to conceive. Yeah. So eventually we then decided that it was better for me to stop traveling. So I retired from traveling. And I'm like hoping at some point, when we have our kids and settled and stuff and they're older, then I'll travel again for work. But so we stopped that, and then just started, we had to investigate a bit. So I ended up being referred by my family doctor to a fertility clinic, and we did all the tests and it was normal. So we were like one more case of unexplained infertility. The doctor was super positive. She's like, everything came back normal. Maybe you guys just need a little push and we're going to get you pregnant. And she was super positive. I remember like leaving the clinic, just like smiling, I'm like, we're going to have a baby. Like by the end, I think it was summer too, which makes you even happier in Toronto, because it's the only time that we have like warmth and sun. So for a Brazilian person, that makes a huge difference, like emotionally.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So I'm like, oh my God, by the end of the year, I'm going to be pregnant, and this is so exciting. And she recommended IUI. So we did that twice. And that was already scary. I laugh a little bit when I talk about it, because it was about $1,000, I think, per month. And that was a little bit scary. Yeah. It's a lot of money, right? Just out of nowhere, when you're not expecting to spend any money when you're trying to make a baby. You're expecting that you'd spend a lot of money when you have a baby.
Exactly.
But not to make a baby, right? Maybe a nice dinner and some wine.
Yeah,
and then you make a
have
baby.
A good time, and
Isn't that what people say?
Yeah.
Just have a glass of wine and relax. So definitely,
relax.
definitely not the point here. It was definitely not what happened. So that was scary, just like spending that money, not having the guarantee. And one of the times that we did the IUI was not done by a doctor. It was done by one of the nurses. And the first month that didn't work was fine. The second month, I remember my husband sitting on a chair like next to the bed. He was inside the room with me. And this girl looked, bless her heart, she looked so young and just lacked the experience. Maybe she was probably more nervous than I was, it looked like. And it was horrible. There was blood. It was so painful.
No.
I think she couldn't like smoothly get the little tube through my cervix. It was not, she took it out and up so many times. Yeah. And my husband was like cringing, dying, like next to me. So yeah, and I'm like, it's okay. Like I'm trying to calm her down. Not the way it should be.
How ironic, right?
I know. So that was a horrendous experience. And then I had so much cramping afterwards, I think because it was so like traumatizing, right? From my cervix and stuff. So that was not cool. And then of course it didn't work. So 2 failed, never had a positive test. And then that doctor went on mat leave. So yeah, fun times when your fertility doctor goes on mat leave. So then we got referred to another doctor, which is, I'll say right off the bat, I did not identify with her. And ever since, like we did everything we did with her, and we actually went back now to a different clinic with a different doctor that has worked much better for us, his approach and his personality and stuff. So I'll say that right off the bat, also just for people listening, that you don't feel like you're stuck to one doctor. If you don't, because that's one of my biggest, I don't like to say regrets, but I just, because, I just knew what I knew at that time. And I acted the best I could with my, emotional state, which wasn't a good one at all. But I felt like I was stuck with her. I felt embarrassed of asking around for other doctors. And today, I feel like I could have totally done that. And I see other women doing that too. So I totally try to advocate and speak out, because we feel so intimidated and overwhelmed in those situations, especially so early on in the journey. And we feel, like we're just stuck, and it was just not a good thing. That all being said, she's one of the best doctors in the city. One of the, her clinic is amazing. So anyways, she ended up moving. She founded her own clinic. She left that one that we started. We followed her. And because again, we're like, I didn't want to start from scratch as well.
Again, right? Because I've done all this, done this far. I should just stay here.
Yeah. And so in the end of the day, what happened, my diagnosis, let's say, was low AMH. So diminished ovarian reserve. And the doctor just scared me so much. And thinking back again, it's, so just to paint a bigger picture so people understand, I did my first round of IVF in 2016 to 17. And we had 3 eggs because we only had 3. We didn't test them because she's like, it's only 3. And even if they're abnormal, you never know, they might end up a healthy baby. So I did, which I thought actually was quite humane of her and sensitive for her to do that, because we didn't want to end up with no chances at all. Right. So we didn't test them, but I have a feeling they probably weren't the best quality at that point. And we only waited 3 days as well. We didn't wait for them to 5 to 6 to become blastocysts. So we don't really know if they would have even survived. None of them worked. So then fast forward to the next clinic that we went, that we started our treatment 3 years later. So just to paint that picture so people understand, we get so scared with the with the DOR low AMH diagnosis, and we think that like the clock is walking backwards on us, and we get so scared of the time, and the doctors paint also this horrible picture that, you know, every cycle your eggs are going rotten is what is, you know, the feeling that they give us. And so then this next round that we did was amazing. I had 4 eggs that all fertilized and all went to 5 days. Amazing. The first round. Amazing. And remember this, I'm 3 years older.
Exactly.
Right? Not 3 cycles, you know, that my doctor didn't even want to let me wait, you know, God forbid I, you know, waited 3 months to like take supplements or whatever. No, you're getting older. Oh my God. And then, so in this clinic, we actually did 3 rounds. So the next one, we have even more eggs, and the third one, even more eggs.
Oh, so you banked eggs. Nice.
We banked, again, because I was older and because of the results of my first round 3 years before. That's the only data that my new doctor had, right? Well, the only thing that we all had, which wasn't much, also because we didn't test them and whatnot. So when you look at the whole journey, and I know it's not like that for everyone. I know that people, you know, end up waiting a few months and have worse results later. So I'm not saying, you know, it's okay to wait all this time, but I think that we don't need to feel so desperate when we get this low AMH. And there are so many things. The doctors are, again, they know what they know, right? With their training and their education, but there are things out there that you can do. There are supplements. There's a lot emotionally that you can do, and energetically. I believe in that a lot too, that we can go into if you want. And again, there's the spiritual, religious part for a lot of people as well that you can work on that will affect because we're not just a uterus. That's how I felt in the beginning, that I was just a uterus with 2 ovaries that were just like getting so old. You know, my first doctor said, your AMH is worse than a 40-year-old that I've seen. Sometimes, and I was 30 at the time.
Can you imagine? Like, you need to be better at giving out messages. I don't understand.
I don't either. And this is a woman.
A woman too, right? Like, you should know better.
And a woman that had gone through fertility
that's the
treatment
worst,
too.
because you think, seriously, you know how it feels. You know?
Wow. But again, it's a thing of personality, you know, because she was like, Bianca, you need to get out of your head and just realize that this is what you need to do. Like, I've done this. I've been there before, you know? So she used that experience, but the way that she used it gelled with her personality, which is just maybe a little bit stronger in a way, you know?
Yeah, maybe based on her experience as well. She figured out that, no, you just got to snap out of it and just get this done. And
a little bit like harder in that sense. And I'm more of a like mellow, emotional, like I'll cry over like a commercial.
Most of us are, especially when you're going through this journey, right? It just does that.
So it didn't work for me. That approach did not work. Emotionally, it didn't work. Another thing too that I like talking about is the PIO shots, the progesterone in oil shots. She was a big advocate of that, and I know a lot of doctors are. And she said there was no other option. This is it. Wow. And she guilt tripped me into doing those shots. And she probably doesn't even know what she did, you know, because also I tried talking to her, but I couldn't. I could just talk to the nurses. The clinic was also like the on-call doctor. So whenever I went and she wasn't the on-call doctor for the majority of my consultations. So I didn't
different
see
doctors
her
every
much.
time.
Wow. So I did that, and the shots were not good for me. Like, I know some people say, oh, it's painful and I get knots, and you know, you have to massage. Like, we did the whole thing, and it just really did not work for me. And I was limping and I couldn't work. I could barely walk. I was in bed and just crying. It was the worst. Like,
That's terrible.
I think we did it for about 10, 11 days for the first transfer. And I kept calling them. I'm like, this is not right. Like, I can barely do stuff in the house. I'm not working, which is also so stressful. It's like such a snowball that I find a lot of people that are not in this journey don't understand. Like, you're not working, you're not making money. And that you have to pay for these treatments that are so expensive. So the whole thing is
together at the same time.
Yeah, it's a snowball that just gets bigger and bigger. It was awful. And then I kept talking to the nurses. The nurses would talk to her, and then they're like, no, this is what she believes in. Do you want to have a baby? So they would ask, it was, totally guilt trip.
Oh, wow.
It was awful. So then I felt like, okay, if I'm not doing these shots, it's because I don't want it. I don't want it enough.
Yeah, which is, oof.
Or I'm not doing my best. And then if I'm not doing my best, maybe I don't deserve to be a mom. You know, these are all things that we spiral down into, and it's awful. Awful. I can talk very lightly about it now because I've done a lot of emotional work. But I couldn't even talk about it before. I would just like start bawling my eyes out because it was really traumatic. Really, really, really traumatic. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. And when you talk about, you know, of course, how expensive it was, is there any part of this that was covered by insurance or?
Yes. So we didn't have any insurance at the time because both me and my husband were self-employed. So, but what we did have for that first round, the one that didn't work with the 3 embryos, we had it funded by our public health system, which is amazing. So in Ontario, each couple under a certain age, 40 something, then they don't cover it anymore.
Right.
But so under that age, you have one per couple or per person that is seeking treatment. And so they cover all the procedures, but you have to pay for the medication. So our medication alone was about $8,000 altogether for the stimulation and the 3 transfers.
Ouch.
Ouch is right, because then we ended up with a lot of trauma, no baby, and $8,000 debt.
And it's terrible, isn't it? Because you want to do this, right? Because you really want the baby, but then you think how much money you're spending and taking out from wherever else, you know, and there's no guarantees.
No. And it's I don't know if other people feel like that, but I always felt like guilt in so many different ways and aspects of this journey. So the guilt of spending the money and a little bit of anger as well, right? Because people are popping up pregnant left and right.
Oh yeah.
From a dinner and a glass of wine. Like we said before, right? Or a vacation. Just take a vacation.
Or just relax. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. The stuff we've heard all these years is unbelievable.
And some are not even trying.
I know. I don't know how this happened. I'm like, seriously? Let's go to biology class. Like, did you not learn that? I don't know how this happened. That one just like, stabbing my heart. But what was I saying before?
No, sorry. Went all on a tangent and then made you forget.
Yes.
Let me see now.
I had a coworker say that.
Oh, really?
Like, oh my, yeah, because I think I was traveling, and then I came back and she had a bump, and I'm like, oh my God, congratulations. And she's like, yeah, I know how this happened. Like, okay, I just walked away, literally, just like, turned my back and just walked away.
I'm not gonna get into that. Yeah. But then you're also talking about the payment. You spent $8,000 and
that's right. The guilt. Yes. So the guilt of spending the money and the anger of people that around you that are just just
Yeah.
happening. And then the guilt of feeling guilty for spending the money.
Yeah, right. Because you start comparing. If I wanted that much, I should
yeah, if I wanted that much, then I
spend.
should be willing to like mortgage my house
Yeah.
and sell my
Everything. Yeah.
mother to the,
Yeah.
you know, it's doesn't have to be like that. But yeah, it's like guilt, a lot of it in like different aspects for not doing it, for doing
Yeah.
too much, for not doing enough.
I know.
Yeah,
And it's crazy.
and that's why it's a
Yeah.
roller coaster ride,
It
we
is.
say, right? Yeah.
It is. And sometimes you spend so much money, people go into so much debt before even having the kids. And if you're lucky enough and the kids come, you just think, geez, how do you not get out the debt you're now into, right? Like,
Yeah.
and there's still the additional cost of, you know, of course, raising the kids. It's
yeah, because a newborn, and then planning for school or daycare, and then not working also for whatever time mat leave you're taking. Here we're lucky we get mat leave for a year,
which is amazing.
But it's very capped. Yeah, it is amazing. And I'm so grateful because like if we were back in Brazil, the mat leave is not good.
Yeah, in Nigeria is 3 months, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Brazil is the same. Yeah, it's terrible. But it's capped. So it's not like I'm getting my full salary.
Yeah.
Mind you, COVID has been preparing us for that because I haven't got a full salary in about a year.
Wow.
So that's scary too. But in a way, it's like, you know what? We're learning to somehow manage it. Yeah. Not that we're not in debt, like everything that we had to pay for, everything was, loans and line of credits and stuff that we learned to manage, and we plan. My lucky thing, my husband is very financially sound, which I am not.
Thank God.
So he is, so we have a good balance on that. So he's always like pulling me back and like, okay, we need to sit and we need to plan. And so, I'm sure we'll pull it together, but it's not an easy thing.
No, it's not.
And that's traumatic too, right? Especially if you've been a couple, or if you're single, whatever it is, that you've been, financially on the right track, you're a planner or not, but you've been, you pay your credit cards in time and you don't have, and then all of a sudden you're like, I don't know, 10, 20, 30, I don't know how much, like 100. I've heard people saying $100,000 that they've spent in order to have a baby. So it's very, very stressful. So if you're out there, we understand you.
Certainly. And even apart from the financial aspect, it can also impact the relationship, the marriage.
Absolutely.
Will you say that's been any impact, or what impact has had on your relationship? Is it gotten you closer, or how has it impacted you?
Today, closer for sure.
Wonderful.
But through the journey, again, because it has been so long, it was quite rocky at one point. A lot of fights. Also with I hate saying this part, but I'm going to say it anyways, because I do believe it's true, because of the hormones that we take. Yeah. We do get unstable.
That doesn't help.
And that doesn't help. No. And the reason why I don't like saying it too much, just in case people misunderstand, because there is a stigma of women being called hormonal and crazy and bitchy and dramatic. Yeah. So, but there is truth that the hormones do affect us. And even if you're not taking hormones, but if you have a hormonal imbalance, your emotions are going to be all over the place. And that can be an issue. And of course, the partners, whoever they are, they need to try and be understanding. So I remember, so the first IUI that we did, that I was on Clomid, was hands down the worst drug. And I know it's not crazy for everyone. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not just me.
No. That's when you said Clomid, I was like, oof.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that was the one that affected me the most. I remember so clearly. I have no idea why we were fighting, but I threw the remote control and I said the F word, which I say a lot, but not like to my husband, you know, directed at him. I just say it in like light conversation. It was. And as soon as I did it, it was like an out of body experience. I just like saw myself. But even then, even being like so like weirded out and scared that I had just done it, I still felt like I was 100%
like
on the
good.
right.
I got that across. Now you know.
Yeah. And I felt like so like I was right.
Yeah.
And I had the right to do all of that. And then when it calmed down, I'm like, oh my God, who was that person? It was awful. So going into IVF later, I was so scared of the drugs.
Of course.
I was scared of the needles, like really, really scared of the needles, and that I've overcome, thankfully, through a lot of inner work, a lot of meditation that helped. But the drugs did not affect me as much.
Yeah.
But going into it, I remember this fresh time, that I was in a much, much better space. I remember telling my husband, I'm like, look, I'm going to be in slightly different drugs because the protocol was different. We don't know how I'm going to react. So what's going to happen is that whatever I say that is offensive, annoying, absolutely out of my mind, you're just going to shut up and walk away. So that was our deal. That was our deal. And we literally talked just like that. And he looked at me funny. And I'm like, it's okay. You know, maybe you're going to be angry, but then at least we're going to be apart. Where it's not, you know, and then a few minutes later, it's all going to be fine. So I don't care what comes out of my mouth. You just walk away. And he's like, okay. And we actually didn't have a situation very much like that, but we were both like on the same page that we do have to adjust, you know. And I think it's a big lesson. It's a big lesson that if you can overcome, or a big hurdle as well, that when you overcome, you do end up stronger. You come out stronger the other end, which I know it's such a cliche, but it's very true. If you know, you're either like holding hands as you're going through it, or you're further apart because you understand you have to be there. You know, as you know, just like to weather the waters, is that how they say? And then, you know, and then when it calms down a bit, then you hold hands again, because you don't need to be like strong and understanding and, you know, all the time.
It's hard for everybody. It's hard for both
so
people.
hard.
It is.
It took me a long time. I think this might be a nice sort of lesson to understand that my husband, he will never understand what it is to be in my situation. Just as I will never understand what it is to be on his shoes, to see me going through it, right? So it took me a while. In the beginning, it was a lot of resentment. It was resentment because I needed to take the needles, which I had a trauma, and he's totally fine with the needles. He was like happy to give me the needles. Of course, he was nervous in the beginning because it was me, but he was like, fine. He's not even that kind of guy that can't touch the needles and had to overcome that to do it with me. Like he was the strong person. I'm like, oh my God, you know? So I am let's say, weak is a horrible word, but I was the one with the phobia. Let's just say that. And I'm the one that had to go through that. I'm the one that has to get my body through that. I'm the one that has to feel all the feels, to like open my legs for the doctors every other day. It's just
everybody
so much.
Anybody.
I'm the one that has to like be like having the feel, oh, am I pregnant? Am I not pregnant on that 2-week wait, you know, while he's just going around hopeful. That's what he's doing. He's like hopeful and walking around and things are fine, quote unquote, which is, it's not. He has his set of worries. He had his like trauma of like sitting on that chair while I was suffering with that IUI nurse, right? Exactly. And seeing me like bawling my eyes every single night going through those injections the first time. Second time around was so much better. But it took me a long time to understand that he had his set of troubles while I had mine. Whereas in my head at first was, I'm the only one suffering here.
Yeah.
You know, and when that changed, it really changed the dynamics. It changed the energy in our house. You know, we were laughing more again, and just being, you know, just being partners.
Yeah.
Really, instead of me being the suffering wife and him trying to be supportive as he could, but getting like slapped around by me too, because I was just so angry and sad. The sadness really really isolates us too, right?
It does, yeah.
So I think if you can try to find a way to cope with that alone in a way, and understand all the different parts of the journey that you're going through personally, because no one will ever understand that, then it makes you a bit more open as well, I think, to understand your partners or even family. You know, maybe some people are going through this journey alone, but maybe it's like a close friend that they have to rely on, or a parent or a sibling. All these people, as much as they don't understand, they're suffering in their own way as well.
Yes, they are.
You know, like when we were joking about like stuff people say that is so bad to people trying to conceive. But if you and some things are just bad that people should just know better. But sometimes they are, you know, in their way suffering too, and this is the only way that they feel like they can help, is by saying whatever it is, the stupid annoying thing that they say. But then if we learn to take a step back and not be so angry, you know, because that anger as well just hurts us. It doesn't really hurt the other person.
No,
it just hurts ourselves. So that all of that has been such just a life lesson, and really, I think, brought us to the place where we wanted to be, or we didn't, not that we wanted to be, because we didn't know, but it brought us to a place that we are the parents now that we want to be, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well said. I love it, because even I'm glad that you both got to a place where you are now. You're happy and supportive. But even sometimes people need to seek some kind of counseling or therapy just to have a better understanding and improve the communication. Because like you said, everyone is dealing with it differently. And he's trying to help, you're angry, and then sometimes it just gets too much.
Yeah. And then you start feeling again too, like with whatever hormonal imbalance or just the feelings, the sadness, the anger, the frustration, you start feeling like you're not a good match of a couple. That's what was happening in my head.
Yeah.
So then it was, again, we spiral into these thoughts that's what the meditation that I talk a lot about on my like podcast and the Instagram, and when I talk to just even regular people that are not going through this journey, is what meditation taught me, is to avoid going down on that spiral of thoughts, whatever bad thought that you think. But like we had a lot of conversations that personally I initiated. It was never him, that maybe we weren't a good couple and we were just wasting each other's time. Mostly I would put me into the forefront and say, I think I'm wasting your time and you're probably better off without me. And it wasn't because I'd never had that thought, maybe you should just find a woman that can get pregnant. I know a lot of women do have that thought, which is super sad. I just had different sad thoughts, just not that specific one. It's horrible to feel that way, but I just felt like we weren't a good match. Like I was annoyed all the time. We would fight all the time, or we would just not talk for like 2 days, because that was my coping mechanism, was the silent treatment. I know a lot of women do that.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's the worst. So we had a lot of talks like that, which were so intense, but looking back, it just again gave us the certainty that no, we are supposed to be together, and we are going to fight through this.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And you
It's
talked
crazy.
about support as well, yes, within yourself and your husband, but also friends. Do you have friends or family members dealing with something similar, or how have you found support outside your husband?
Yes, yes, I do have close friends. Ironically, here in Canada, my close friends don't have kids.
Okay.
So none of them understand by choice, right?
Hmm.
So none of them really understand this urge
Hmm.
that I have of
Yeah.
wanting kids so bad and like doing
All
everything that we've
this.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's sort of funny, but we are close and they're really empathetic people. These are not the people that I've heard silly things from, for
Mm.
sure. My family in Brazil, no one had any trouble. I always joke that when like a few years into the journey, my mom said one day, she said, I also had a bit of trouble getting pregnant with you. And I'm like, oh my God, you never told me that before. What was it? And she's like, yeah, I think it took about 6 months. And I'm like, no.
Ah. Not really the same thing, but hey.
We're not going down that road. Uh,
But to her, she thought he was, right? Because she
yes,
expected it to happen right away. So 6 months to her
exactly.
is a big deal. And, that's how it
Yeah.
is.
And
Everyone
she
is
was
different.
pulling from that experience,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
was probably not a good one for her.
Yeah,
So,
exactly, right?
yeah. So, again, if you're on that angry, sad space, that space I
Mm.
was in for so many years, you just get angry, and
Yeah.
that's when you like go to a forum and say, oh my God, I can't believe that so and so told me that, and blah blah blah. And then that just spirals, right? Because then other people are going to be like, oh my God, you should stop talking to her, oh my
Yeah.
God. And then it just snowballs into a huge, which is fair, like people are trying to support
Mhm.
and give people like girl power, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's not very helpful. But yeah, if you're in a space where, just like you said, like that was her experience
Yeah.
and it wasn't good for her at that moment. That's what she remembers and she wanted to share. So that was probably the closest. But I do have a sister in the UK
Okay.
that went through, again, about 8 years. She has two beautiful boys today
Oh.
from IVF. She had a long, long, tough journey as well. So when I was doing, I think the first round, deciding to do the first round of IVF,
Hmm.
that's when I started to be more in contact with her.
Yeah.
And yeah, but it's so far. And this sister of mine, we didn't grow up together.
Okay.
So we developed our relationship through
Through
this,
that. Yeah.
which is quite cool as well in a way. We
Yeah.
have a nice sort of bond through this, and then just other stuff now, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah,
So
we're closer
important
that way.
to have that
Very,
support
very.
and people that have
Yeah.
understand what you're
And
going
I
through.
have well, not more recently, but I'm trying to remember. Yeah, no, the first IVF, because I remember limping to her house and crying, and she's like, I'm gonna make you tea from the Pio shots.
Oh wow,
And
yeah.
she was doing it at the same time.
Oh,
But she's in a different situation. She did IVF mostly because she was getting older, because she
right,
actually did have a biological child before, but then she had
right.
a miscarriage, and
Oh,
she
so
was
sorry.
a
Yeah.
bit, yeah, she was
Mhm.
a bit scared of like time going back, which I totally understand as
Yeah.
well. But again, she still didn't understand my situation, because she could have biological children if
Yeah.
she, yeah, kept going and stuff, maybe.
Right.
And she already had one, so it was a little bit different. But
Yeah.
we went through it together, like we understood. Like we would talk about our husbands, and we were frustrated and just vent a little bit when we had to.
Yeah.
And like when we were like crazy with the hormones a little bit, and
Yeah.
just talking about, oh my God, I have so many appointments. So that was really helpful as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if anyone doesn't have that, I do find that the forum chats, and of course, like what you're doing with the podcast and just listening to people, the Instagram community that we're into is so
Yeah.
beautiful and
It is.
supportive. It really, really is. So I find that, like, I didn't have that my first round.
Oh,
And I think that it was also nice at this time around to have just a little bit more support from the community itself.
yes, it's so
Yeah.
crucial. It really
Mm-hmm.
helps to make things, I mean, it just helps. Doesn't necessarily, I can't say anything makes it better, but it helps to have people to support you and have understanding.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I know that you said initially that you grew up in Brazil. I just always try to ask, maybe there's a difference in cultures and how fertility or infertility is seen in Brazil versus in North America now. Do you remember if there's anything different, or perhaps people that you speak to back home?
Yeah, I know a couple of people that have been through this journey or are still in it,
Yeah.
that actually some that I found through my sharing, that they
Okay.
came approached me, or maybe just like friends through Instagram or Facebook and stuff, and they're like, oh, I'm going through it as well, and then we became a bit closer, chatting about this. But I know that it's just as expensive,
Mm-hmm.
it's just as privileged,
Right.
as we know it is. The depending on, your income and stuff and your situation, it's very challenging.
Yeah.
One thing that is cool is that Brazil actually has, I think a lot of people don't know, that we have public health,
Okay. I didn't know that.
which is a system that is amazing, except it's really corrupt in a way,
Mm.
as everything is in a developing country, all the
Yeah.
different parts of the system. But it does work very, very well in a lot of different areas. Even the other day, I was talking to my husband about the vaccines, for COVID and stuff.
Yeah.
And not that the vaccination for COVID is doing great there right now. It's a little bit slower than maybe it should. But we have a system that works, when they do vaccination campaigns for other issues in Brazil.
Right.
It just like millions of people in like one day just get
Oh,
vaccinated, or
that's
kids,
amazing. Yeah, that's
yeah.
good.
So they have a good sort of system in play. And again, sometimes it works very well, sometimes it doesn't. But with the fertility, what I've heard is that if you put your name on the list, you could get coverage, and you could get different things covered by the public health system.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, which is good. But again, it's just time. It
Yeah.
takes a
Yeah.
long, long time to get called and to being on this waiting list. So the
Mm.
people I know are just doing everything out of pocket.
Themselves.
And you either have savings to go through it, or you just, like what we said, you remortgage your house, you get
Yeah.
lines of credit and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All my fertility journey, I was here in Canada. So
Right.
personally, I don't have any experience there, but we do have like amazing doctors and stuff
Okay. That's good to
there
know.
that, yeah, very well known as well. And because I did have a few friends recommend me, oh, check this guy online, like he's like one of the top in the world that talks about this, and one of the only ones in the world that is doing this new technique of whatever,
Yeah.
in artificial insemination and all the different ways that you can treat to conceive. So yeah, so there's a lot of that,
That's
but I
good.
I haven't personally experienced it. Yeah.
That's pretty good. Um, and just actually, when we are speaking about, you noted earlier that the other cycles that you did, you got a lot more eggs than the initial cycle, and of course you did egg banking, and that you thought you did some things different. Perhaps you ate differently, or other things that you tried. Can you tell us about other things that you tried, and perhaps how the other cycles went afterward?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things I'm most passionate about. So
Good.
it's obviously like, yeah, it's obviously not one thing, right?
Yeah.
And again, everything I said worked for me doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. But
Yeah.
the first thing that happened is that I went to my osteopath, and I remember him, and I hadn't been to him in a while, like a good maybe 3 to 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to him because I have an issue on my back and stuff. So he looked at my tummy and he's like, wow, you're bloated. And I'm like,
Oh.
and I got all defensive. I'm like, no, I'm just older, and I just have a tummy because every woman starts getting a tummy. And so I got a bit defensive, like crossed my arms over my tummy, and he started treating me. And osteopaths and this particular guy is just so, so amazing. Very holistic,
Right.
He never just looks at what I say is bothering me, always the whole body. And he has a good understanding of like palpating internal organs and stuff. And he's like, no, you're like very inflamed, your digestive system. I would recommend that you try getting off gluten, because gluten's very inflammatory. Have you ever done that? I said no. And then, so that was the first thing that I did. And it was life changing. It really was. Because I never realized that you weren't supposed to feel crappy every time you eat. Literally, I would feel bloated and tired.
Yeah.
But I thought, I just had a big meal, so that's normal. It's not something that you talk about with people, right?
Oh, no.
So I just thought that was a normal thing. Oh, my tummy's like distended.
Yeah.
Because I just ate.
I just
That's
ate.
normal.
Yeah, that's what I
But
thought too.
It's not. It's totally not normal. So that was the first thing that was really, my body was just inflamed. And then when I saw that I made a difference, I said, okay, I actually need someone to help me. My osteopath is not a nutritionist. He's not a naturopath. He was just from his own experience helping me out. And we're very friendly because I've been treating with him for like probably over 10 years now. So that was just a tip, out of the top of his head. I'm like, I need a professional to help me through this, because if this is one thing made such a big difference, there's probably other things happening in my body as well. And I grew up with homeopathic medicine. Yeah, which a lot of people don't know, but it's alternative medicine. Amazing, always worked. Unless we had something like really serious that needed antibiotics, we always went with homeopathic remedies. That was my growing up in Brazil, and I kept it going after I moved here. So I was always more into the alternative than the allopathic medicine. So I said, okay, I'm going to go into a naturopath that a friend of mine was recommending for the longest time, but he was very, very expensive. His consultation's expensive, and his medication was expensive as well, the supplements that he prescribed himself. So I'm like, you know what, if I'm going to do this, I might as well go full out, and then at that point we had decided to stop the treatments. So I said, okay, we're not going to pay for IVF for a while. If that's the case that we need to do it again. So I'm just going to put all my money on this. So I started a naturopath, and one of the first things two things that were super important. He realized I had candida.
What's that?
Candida is like an yeast that we all have, but if it grows too much in your body and it creates a big imbalance, like the bad bacteria versus the good bacteria that we have in our gut and stuff, and even like our vaginal flora, that kind of stuff, then it becomes an issue. And, I started understanding with him as well how the digestive system is so connected to fertility, because it's so close together, right? So imagine like your intestines, colon or whatnot, and your uterus and ovaries, they're so close. Your bladder as well, right? So how well your kidneys are function, all of that. They're all connected by fascia as well, which is a connective tissue that sort of keeps things tight. They're not all loosey-goosey, right? Sliding off each other. They're right. So imagine like if you have an inflammation in the digestive system and in your intestines, then it's like pushing onto your ovaries or your uterus or your bladder the same, right? If your bladder is irritated by like a UTI, we know how close that's connected as women, right? We know how well that's connected with your reproductive organs as well. So all of that was addressed. I had kidney issues as well. So digestion, the candida, which is the yeast infection, and my kidneys. He didn't even want to talk about fertility.
Wow.
but in the end of the day, he was actually treating my fertility, because when you balance those things out, it's a whole system, right? Like an orchestra, I say. If you have an orchestra and you have a couple of instruments that are out of tune, it's going to sound horrible.
Yeah.
And maybe for a year that, if you're just someone that doesn't know music and instruments, like me, I go to see an amateur opera, I wouldn't know much of the difference. It's still going to sound beautiful to me. But then you go to the naturopath, that is the specialist, right? He's like the maestro. He's listening to those instruments out of tune. He's like, no, I need to fix this because this sounds horrible, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that was a big, big part of my, let's call my recovery, from all of that, and all of that I had done as well. My birth control, I took birth control for over 14 years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that was a big deal for him too, to just clean out my liver, etc. So that was, the naturopath was a big, big deal for me. And I still work with him till today. I think that probably improved my AMH as well, the quality of my eggs and such. And then the other part was the emotional part.
Yes,
so again, like I said, I was a mess. I was just a mess. I recently told someone that I was just walking around like I was this inside of bubble that only I understood, right? So again, that anger that just like I threw into the world, and it would bounce into my bubble and like smack me right back in the face. And so it was doing me no good. The sadness and the broken heart, all of that. And I was just walking around in this bubble that just had like infertility written all around it. Yeah. So that was that label that I put on myself.
Yeah.
Was awful. So I did counseling. I did regular counseling, like with a therapist she was a fertility specialist, but just a sort of regular, sort of mainstream line of therapy. So that was good. She also gave me good techniques, I would say, strategies to deal with my husband, like as a couple, and stuff like that, which was really helpful. Then I did a spiritual coaching. So spiritual therapy, which was, again, it's like right up my alley. I know it's not for everyone, but I believe in spirits. I believe that like the spirit of our babies are going to choose us. I do believe in those things. And I do believe in energy. So, if you cultivate positive, healthy energy, then that's what's going to come back. Sort of law of attraction kind of thing. I didn't really go into that too much with my therapy, but it's sort of, I believe in those lines of thought. So I did that, which was, she did like visualization meditations. So I could take that to my own time as well. It wasn't just when I was doing things with her. Yeah, that was beneficial. So I just, had this big sort of a platter, of different strategies and resources that I had. What else did and then my meditation. So the meditation that I do it's a Qigong. Qigong is a movement therapy, similar to Tai Chi. But different. And so Qigong and meditation and like energy healing is what I do. So I found this teacher through a friend, and I really identified with it. His style of teaching is Korean Buddhism. That's where his training, and from Thailand, he has training from Thailand as well. So I talk about it a lot because it's what I mentioned earlier. It's about realizing that like you're not your thoughts. So everything that comes to you, like I had in the very beginning, and I couldn't get out of it because it felt so true to me, right? Maybe I'm not deserving of being a mother. Maybe, I'm not putting enough heart into these pio shots. Maybe I need to suffer this much, and you actually don't.
No, you don't.
There are different alternatives, and you definitely don't need to be thinking those things. So getting rid of that idea that everything that comes through your mind is true, which is not. Absolutely. But we do take it as truth always. And then also like learning, like I said before, not to go into a downward spiral. So I'll do it just a quick little lesson that I find is so important and so simple. We never think about it this way, but your thoughts are just thoughts coming through your mind. They only become thinking when you get hooked on it. Right. So if a thought comes through and you're like, oh, I'm not deserving of being a mother, and you just let it go, that's it. That's fine. You're not bad for thinking it, and it's not like, oh, I need to do more work because I keep thinking these things. No, it's fine. It's just a thought. Now, when you catch it and you start talking and you start spiraling with that thought of not being deserved or feeling guilty or shame or whatever it is, that's when that thinking becomes a story. And that's when we get angry and sad and we suffer unnecessarily. So those lessons like just changed my life.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to look into some of what you've highlighted.
Yes.
Again, like you noted, it doesn't have to work for everybody, but it works for you. And that's amazing. And we're all different.
And I think it's worth trying. You see something that someone did, you're like, oh, you know what? I'll read about it.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't identify, put it away. Oh, I'll do a class of this. Like some people like yoga, some people like weight training, some people like Pilates, some people like CrossFit. It doesn't mean one thing is better than the next. It's just different. And you have to find, but if you're suffering, it's worth trying. Like, don't sit in your little pocket or bubble of suffering like I was doing. It's not worth it.
No.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Bianca. Now, if you look back, let's say, I don't know, 20 years ago, Bianca, knowing all that you know now with fertility, with, all you've learned in terms of spirits, managing emotions, meditation, everything you know now, looking back at 17-year-old Bianca, what would you tell her?
Oh, such a hard question. I always joke, I would say, just have babies. Don't listen to the old people.
I know, right?
Don't wait until you buy a house.
I was so afraid of even moving next to a guy. Everything was like, as long as you get close to a guy, you're gonna get pregnant. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, exactly. No, all jokes aside, I would to be quite honest, like I always say now that I am very thankful, maybe grateful, maybe not thankful, grateful for my journey and how much I grew. So I wouldn't want to be a mother of that person that started when I started trying, to be quite honest. I think I'm going to be a much better mother now. Both of us parents, as a couple too, I think we'll be together as a couple much better now than we would have been when we started trying. But that young, like say late teens, early 20s, I think I would say, it's worth paying a bit more attention to your body.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Body and mind. I think those, And it doesn't mean, you have to like not drink at all or not eat bread at all, but just being a bit more attentive to that. And I think that would be the thing. Not that I was like too crazy when I was that age, but I always wonder too, finding out like that gluten sensitivity, like how much that affected my body. And then trying something like conceiving a child in your 30s, it's much harder if your body is that aggravated.
Yeah.
So I think something on those lines, take care of your body and your mind. Yeah.
Great. And if there is a quote or word of affirmation that has helped you so far?
I think not anything like in particular, but I think books did help me.
Yes.
Books. So technical books like It Starts with the Egg.
Yeah.
That one. And also, great book. And also one that's called The Better Baby Book.
Oh, I
was
haven't heard
really
that one.
helpful. Yeah, very, very nice. It didn't come from someone struggling with fertility as much as someone that was really, really concerned about having a healthy body to conceive a child.
Right.
And I love that one because it puts things in a spectrum versus saying gluten is horrible, don't eat gluten. It just puts things in a spectrum and saying, okay, from worst to best, in terms of protein, in terms of vegetables, in terms of gluten, not gluten, whatever, I don't remember exactly, but that was a very helpful one. And I think then the teachings that I just mentioned before from my teacher. I'm trying to remember. I can always give you some titles of books now.
Sure, yeah.
Later, sorry, from that have helped. But I know I don't know how to pronounce, but Pema Kodron, I think is I don't know how to pronounce it, so I'm sorry if I'm butchering it. But she's a Buddhist monk that has written beautiful, beautiful books. And then the latest one, I'll say this one because it was really, really good. It's called The Gift of Anger. And it was written by Gandhi's grandson.
Interesting.
I just finished like last week reading it literally. And there was a few chapters, especially in the beginning, where he talks about anger and how his granddad, how cool can that be, seriously, be Gandhi's grandson. And he lived with him for a bit in the ashram in India, and how he talked about anger. It made me think of our community so much because we have so much anger, right? We have so much anger with different things, like we talked about this last hour. So that was super insightful as well.
That's good. I'm going to check it out. Thank you for those. So now I know you have a podcast as well. And of course, your Instagram account, raising awareness. Can you tell us how that came to be? Why did you start the Instagram account, the podcast, and how can people reach you and connect with you?
Absolutely. So Instagram is where I am most of the time, and I check it all the time as well. So if anyone wants to send messages and stuff, so myfertilityjourney.ca. And it started when I wanted to just post my writings. So I started posting on medium.com, which is sort of a community blog platform. That's where my writings are. And then I just wanted to get it out a bit more. So I thought, I'll just get this Instagram account and just post the links, right, to my writings and talk about it a bit to spread it out. And then share it also on my personal Instagram, which is at Bianca Bolesian. So that's how it started. And then it became more than that because I got really like into the community, which I didn't really expect. It wasn't my first thought. And it's such an amazing community. So I made good friends like you. And so exciting. I'm so grateful for that, the people that I've been meeting. So then with that and the writings and the Instagram and meeting people, I thought, I think I want to start a podcast. And that's what I did. And we both started last year, right? 2020.
During the lockdown.
Exactly. The year of projects launching. So that was pretty cool. And I always wanted to do something that I could do from home,
Right. Yeah.
And, like maybe when I have kids is a project that I can continue and stuff like that. So My Fertility Journey Life Chats with Bianca Bolesian is the podcast. And that's where, I talk to people like us, that are still waiting for their baby. And I talk to some experts in various different, not just like the fertility. Like I interviewed my spiritual coach is there. A person that I met that had a fertility journey, but I actually met her because she's an advocate for clean beauty products.
Oh, that's wonderful.
We talk about her journey, but we also talk a lot about that. And she had a lot of like great things and tips for people that are looking to clean their lifestyle. A friend of mine, the nutritionist. So it's, a little bit of everything there. And then I also read my posts. So I read my posts. So it's more of an audio form. form of the writing. And then because we were talking about this before we started recording, right? I'm a post sharer. So I don't share things live as much, like as they're happening. I write things and then I post afterwards. So yeah, so the one I read last week is from the end of the transfers that didn't work from 2017. So then it's very interesting because then I can reflect on it a little bit, because it's been so long. Yeah. So it's been cool. It's very emotional too, to share, as you know, right? To share your journey in such a vulnerable, it's different when you write words and post it for people to read, but when you're actually like using your voice and the emotion in your heart, it's a whole different ball game. Yeah,
it is. I find my voice always shakes every time. Doesn't matter how I try to be composed, it doesn't happen.
I know. Yeah, same here. Yeah. So it's cool. It's very special, I find, to have these recordings that are going to be there forever.
Exactly. And it will help someone, at least one person. And I know it's probably helping a whole lot more people than that. So thank you so much for everything you're doing in the community and raising awareness and just blessing us with all this information. Because in reality, for infertility, it's a whole body that needs to be looked at. So I like the whole holistic look.
Yes, yeah. Right. And I appreciate the space that you gave me to share my story. I know I talk a lot, but I am just so grateful to have met you.
I know, right? Thank you, Instagram.
Yes.
Now we're going to go to Clubhouse and continue there.
Yes, absolutely. Just keep on the conversation.
Yes. So as a wrap up, Bianca, any words of encouragement for anyone listening or a couple listening who are also dealing with infertility?
Yes, I always say the first thing comes to mind is always advocate for yourself. Yes. Like I mentioned back then, don't feel like you're stuck somewhere. Don't give yourself a label. You're not a label of one thing. Your fertility is just a part of your life. It's not your whole life. You're still so many other things. If you feel stuck, then look for help. Like I took so long to look for help. And I had my journey to go through. Everyone does, but I think if you're listening to this and you feel stuck, just look for help. Talk to people that you feel are like-minded, that are not going to be like lack empathy and just make you feel worse about your journey. So the community, a therapist that's going to be impartial, hopefully not say something stupid, but don't be embarrassed to look for help. We all need help. And just know that it's hard. We don't have to be positive and all peppy all the time. That's another thing too, that like toxic positivity, it's not, you don't need to be enjoying this hardship because it's part of your journey, oh, this is it and it's exciting. No, it's not. It's very, very shitty a lot of the time. So once you understand that, and just keep moving on, moving forward. We don't move on, we say, right? We don't move on, we move forward. Yes. There you go, a quote for you, Ola, to finish.
I love quotes, don't I?
We don't move on, we move forward.
I love it. Thank you so much, Bianca. It's been amazing having you on here. You've shared so much information, so much words of encouragement, so much practical things that we can change and implement, or at least explore. So that's wonderful. It's been a pleasure having you on here. And we hope that 2021 will bring you your desired outcome. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you too. Yeah, right back at you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Fertility Conversations podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give us a 5-star rating and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram at Fertility Conversations. If there are any topics you would like to have discussed, please send an email to fertilityconversations@gmail.com. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode. Thank you again for listening. Take care of yourself and do stay hopeful.